Good afternoon, good evening to our friends in North America, and good morning to our friends in Asia. My name is Peter Shea. I am the current chairperson of Monty J Science and Technology Division. Thank you for taking your valuable weekend time instead of doing pre-Black Friday shopping. You have decided to come here to join us with our TIANS Forum event. This will be Monty J's last TIANS Forum event for year 2021. And we thank you for the support that you have given us. Just as a reminder, TIANS Forum is Monty J's effort in memory of Dr. Tian Changling Tian, who was former chancellor of UC Berkeley. In the TIANS Forum series, we interview outstanding Asian Americans to understand firsthand the effort and achievement they have made today. This is the last session of TIANS Forum held by Monty J Science and Technology Association in 2021. It will mark also the first of a series of our effort to assist Asian Americans in North America to cross the bamboo ceiling phenomenon. It is my great pleasure today to have an outstanding gentleman, also from Taiwan, who went to Stanford a year after me. We've enjoyed the sceneries at Yosemite National Park together. We've also enjoyed beer and lobster in Boston and had lots of fun. Mr. Yu-Ting Kuo, Corporate Vice President of Microsoft. I know you're here to listen to his insights, but I just want to take the moment here to thank you again for your support, not only over the last 31 years, but also especially over this past year during COVID, when you are supporting our virtual series. Before the event starts, I would like to introduce Director Ye Zhicheng, Chi-Cheng Ye, or Tom Ye, who is the Director of Science and Technology Division of Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in San Francisco. They are the sole sponsor of today's event, and I would like to ask Dr. Ye or Director Ye to say a few words. Thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you, Peter. Hi, guys. Good afternoon. I'm Tom Ye, Director of Science and Technology Division, Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in San Francisco, also known as Liaison Office for Ministry of Science and Technology Taiwan in the Bay Area. Based on the long-term and close relationship with the Monty J Association, it's my honor to be the sponsor of this event. The mission of my office is to promote science and technology collaboration between Taiwan and Silicon Valley, to build a bridge for tech professionals in the Bay Area and Taiwan to interact and further cooperate to develop their business. My office also is the contact window of science park such as Hsinchu Science Park, Central Science Park, Southern Science Park of Taiwan in the Bay Area. So if you want to explore tech business opportunities, or if you are expecting to build engineering team or R&D center in Taiwan, you are very welcome to contact me. I will be happy to share more information for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ye. It's always good to see you, even during virtual times. Now, Benny and Yu-Ting, it's your platform. I welcome Benny and Yu-Ting. It's your show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter and Director Ye. Hi, everyone. I'm Benny. I'm a senior manager at Amazon and a board member for Monty J West. And I'm your host for this evening's TIAN Forum event, which is an interview with Kuo Yu-Ting on executive leadership for Asian Americans. I'm very excited about today's event. Yu-Ting is currently a corporate vice president in technology and research group in Microsoft, in charge of multiple cross-company technical and strategic initiatives in machine learning and artificial intelligence at large scale. In September this year, Business Insider named Yu-Ting as one of the top most powerful AI players in Microsoft, with notable achievements in building Microsoft's Azure Cognitive Services and founding Microsoft AI R&D Center in Taipei, Zurich, Belgrade, and Cambridge. On top of that, Yu-Ting is also the executive board for MIT Sloan School of Management, an adjunct professor in computer science at National Tsinghua University, and guest lecturer in MBA classes at Oxford and MIT. And he's still able to find time to mentor venture founders at MIT Delta V Accelerator and Tsinghua University's Garage Incubator. I should also mention that Yu-Ting will be retiring later this year, and he's planning to devote his time in giving back to the community by sharing his experiences and lessons learned with aspiring professionals like the event we have here this evening. Hi, Yu-Ting. Thank you very much for spending time with us today. I've been really looking forward to this event and speaking with you.
Likewise, and thanks for your kind introduction, Benny. Hi, everyone. My name is Yu-Ting, and it is my greatest honor to join the 10th forum today, and of course, my pleasure to meet all of you virtually here. And I actually wanted to start just by thanking Director Ye and Monty, Jade, and Peter, Benny, and Helen, and Wilson for the opportunity. I'm hoping you will find some of the lessons or thoughts that I have so kind of learned and shared today will be hopefully they will be useful as you kind of navigate your own path. Yeah.
Thank you. So like many attendees here today, Yu-Ting, I understand that you are a first generation immigrant to US. I also understand that, you have a pretty unique career with Microsoft and starting with, the office at Taipei. Would you be able to share with us how you got to US and if you had any, challenges with the transition of to a different, country?
Sure. I came from Taiwan originally, as Peter and Benny had mentioned, and I grew up and I was educated there all the way through college. I actually struggled and barely managed to graduate from college. And actually, even to this day, I'm actually still very proud that I managed to graduate in 4 years, even though that's a little bit embarrassing as well, given all the grade I had and all these. And after college, I did not know what I wanted to do or even what I could do. So eventually, I decided to come to the US of grad school, hoping that it will help me figure out, again, what to do more my life. Although in all honesty and embarrassingly, my mindset was more or less buying my time not to have to face the ultimate reality of being a responsible and useful citizen in our society. So I was just kind of try to, just, get a bit more time to figure it out. And I left school in 1994, and I went back to Taipei. Mostly I was kind of following my wife or then girlfriend going back there. So I went back there and then I started my first job actually in McKinsey as a consultant. And then after a couple of years, I joined Microsoft because of too much travel and I was getting married. Then I decided to join Microsoft in Taipei in marketing. So my career path in many ways aren't really very typical of, lots of Asians here are probably most likely starting in engineering or research, and over time, some of us would move over to kind of move on the business side. So I am kind of a little bit more doing the reverse way. I started as a strategy consultant and then moving to a kind of marketing operating role in a subsidiary of a multinational companies. And then after 2 years, I came over to Seattle, our headquarters, and then I've been here for the last 23 years. So in total, I've been with Microsoft about 25 years. And I think, as Benny mentioned, that I am retiring actually as we speak. And so, yeah, so that's sort of kind of my path, literally kind of after I left school. Yeah.
Right. Yu-Ting, I think you have such an interesting path from a career standpoint, having worked in both, Taipei and also in US, right, about for the same company. Do you see that there are differences in terms of, the management culture or even the company culture in these cases?
I wouldn't, I wouldn't claim that I really know the differences simply because even when for the short 4 years I worked in Taiwan, I was still working for multinational companies, and so but even that, I think there were some differences. I'll probably just compare, let's say, my experiences of in my first 2 years in Microsoft subsidiaries in Taiwan versus in the Renmin headquarters. And of course, over the years, I have a lot of experiences working and leading our engineering teams over in different places around the world. So I would say, generally speaking, it is still similar, but there's still a lot of kind of local factors. Take an example from a management perspective. There is probably a bit more authoritative, kind of more authoritative approach over in Asia versus in the headquarters. But in general, I think the culture is still largely consistent in the sense of being very respectful. People can challenge management in at least to a certain degree, depending on kind of which locations. And the English is also the common language we use, right? Yeah, so I would say mostly still similar, but of course, in Taiwan, you have you do business with local businesses, right? And with local customers, and so there are some unique ways of engaging customers that you may not necessarily see. We do the same thing in the US or in other countries. Yeah.
I see. So, talking about leadership, would you be able to describe what was your first leadership role at Microsoft, and perhaps share with some of the aspiring professionals here of what are some of the initial struggles that you faced?
Sure. Yeah. To be honest, I was never a leader type throughout my childhood. In fact, I was once elected as a vice class representative, or I think in Chinese is 副班长, in junior high school. And simply because my classmates thought that they could easily run over me because I was a little boy, and they thought it would be easy. But in a joke aside, I think most, if not all, roles have leadership moments. So this could be a thought leadership opportunity in offering a strategic or creating idea. This could be a technical leadership moment in coming up with a brilliant technical solution. Or this could be a people leadership challenge in leading an organization. So I think in terms of talking about a leadership role, so let me share one of my first professional leadership moments. And this was about 20 years ago. I was actually 2001, if I remember correctly. So that's exactly 20 years ago. I was a junior individual contributor working on pricing strategy and cost analysis of a money-losing consumer services in my early days at Microsoft. And when our key competitor raised the prices of their offerings, at that time, I was tasked with coming up with a recommendation if we should do the same, or if we should actually take the opportunity not to do the same and then actually get more users because of a higher price that our competitors is offering. At the time, the guidance from our division VP and the sentiment across the organization was not to increase our prices so that we could seize that opportunity to increase our market share. Me being a junior individual contributor, although I was a bit of a contrarian, that I actually thought that was not the right thing to do. I believe that for us, and also because I was actually also responsible not just for pricing, but also the cost analysis, of our services offerings that I was, and so my insight at that time was that we are not on a path to be profitable. Actually, we are not even on a path to be profitable in the long run. And then I believe that we should use this moment to actually increase the price to help us improve our ability to be profitable at the same time. And I believe that the price increase would not impact our ability to get customers, because I don't believe price is actually the key for success, even though it is an important factor. So anyway, so I managed to rally and influence a couple of product managers to work together, and we propose again, I was saying it's actually a more contrarian proposal, and eventually we managed to convince our middle management as well as the executive management to do what we believe is the right thing to do. And then I thought that was to me, that was actually a very interesting leadership moment, just because, I wasn't managing anyone and I was an individual contributor. So it's really about exercising, influence without authority and really rally, people to your camp and working together and then to, convince a larger, or broader set of audience. And of course, honestly, I probably got lucky a little bit. In fact, actually, a magnitude of a 6.8 earthquake happened to occur in Seattle during the last 5 minutes in the review with our divisional VP. So he literally actually gave me the green light and approval while he was rushing to get out of the building. So maybe I was actually so lucky to get that approved. Yeah. So that's probably just one of the examples I could share today.
No, Yu-Ting, like I think you touch on a few very interesting concepts, right? I think the first one which you mentioned is influencing without authority, and you don't really need authority to get your ideas and your thoughts through. Like I'm really hoping to be able to dive into that a lot more. But one of the concepts that you mentioned as well, because there is a clear segregation between being a leader and being a manager, and your first leadership role is actually not coming from being a manager, but coming from being an individual contributor. So, how has these experiences made you become, like when did you first become a manager, and how does these experiences help you become an even better manager?
Okay, good. No, I think this is a great question. And so maybe I will just kind of start by mentioning that you are absolutely right that, being a leader and being a manager, they are not the same thing. In fact, they are very much related, but they are different, right? And being a leader you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. But at the same time, being a manager does not automatically guarantee that you are a leader or people are going to see you as a leader, right? So I think this is very important. I think a lot of people do not realize that early enough. And we all actually love to be a manager. We think we're going to lead people, we're going to manage people, but then again, in my mind, the best timing to start developing your leadership is actually before you become a manager. And the reason I said that is actually for practical reason. Once you become a manager, it becomes more difficult to actually know when actually people do what you believe is the right thing to do or what you ask them to do. It's a lot of times it's actually difficult to figure out whether they're doing that is because you are a manager, you actually have some control over their the bonus they get or the promotion they want to have, and so that they are just doing what you're asking them to do, or it's because they actually truly believe you and they want to be part of the efforts because they believe you are leading them to the right direction. So I would totally argue that you really want to start exercising your leadership before you becoming a manager. And then also knowing that the skill sets are somewhat different. I mean, some of them are quite transferable, but a lot of these are, taking different attributes, of that, right? And I think when it comes to kind of to answer, Benny, to answer your question about kind of being a manager, and maybe I will probably say, kind of the struggle that I had, when I first became a manager was that I would say I was actually super excited. I could now manage people. Now I can actually have one-on-ones, sit down with the people in my team, talk about things. And I think we probably see a lot of us, pretty excited about doing that when we first became a manager. And then of course, I also understand, I know that I now have more help to work, from my team members to work on the projects, right? So I think that's all good. But I actually did not know what else. What to do or what to expect as a manager. That, to be very honest, I actually struggled to kind of adjust how I work and how I interact with people in my team. And take an example, I was actually terribly, now of course it's all hindsight now, but I was terribly assumed that my direct reports would pretty much work the way I do. For example, staying up late and actually being an introvert and a non-native speaker, I actually prefer communication over email than anything else, particularly in-person communications. I would try to avoid any opportunities that I have to speak in English. I was like, whatever, I can write, but I can read, but it's just harder for me to speak. Therefore, I would just try to avoid as much as I can. And then I sort of kind of carried it over when I became a manager. And I did not realize, I sort of kind of made a bad assumption or kind of unconscious bias that's, people can work that way. And until one day, actually, HR came by and then let me know that a couple of folks in my team, and in fact, I was only managing 3 persons at that time. So a couple of people means actually, in the minimum of 2/3, of my team, they were stretched. They were actually stressed because every day they would get a lot of email messages from me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Even though I did not ask, nor did I expect a prompt response from them, but the feedback was that they felt very much pressured and then the need to get up at 3 or 4 a.m. to answer my email. And then actually even worse, that they also didn't get a chance to talk to me during the day to get any clarification because I seemed to be busy doing my own work and didn't want to talk to people. Right? And so I think I was struggling for that for quite a while until, of course, HR, sort of kind of the conversation with HR. Obviously, I was nervous because I thought, wow, okay, now what do I do? But it was a wake-up call for me to start realizing that I have to change, and if I want to lead them, if I want to manage them, I have to, I really have to put myself in their shoes. I really got to have some empathy, and kind of from their perspective, and then I have to do things differently, right? So, but that took me a few months to figure out as well. Yeah. So I would just kind of share. That's how I started. Nothing fancy, but.
No, thank you for sharing. Like, I think, I can identify, quite a bit of the experience with myself as well when I was a, young manager. So, Yu-Ting, I'm really curious, you started at a place where you didn't know, much about management. You're trying to find your way around. How did you, would you be able to share your journey, to become, an executive that you are today? Like, was there a specific event or a person, or how did that evolution came about?
Sure. Yeah. It's yeah. I think you're right that it took some events and then some of course context, right? But context is really about events and people and things kind of and sort of kind of help define sort of a bit more of a kind of second phase of my career. And I would say my journey to become an executive in a multinational company is a bit of both accidental and growth out of necessity. And I eventually, while I was just talking about kind of the struggle I had, when I first became a manager, I eventually learned to be a better line manager and felt comfortable even managing 40 or 50 people or so over time. And so that was actually doing fine, and I thought that was that was great. But until 6 or 7 years ago, I actually never thought or dreamed of taking any roles that involve in leading a business or a large size organization. And I'll be just frank here, it's not like I wasn't that ambitious. Probably with American standards, probably I just wasn't ambitious at all. But the pivotal moment for me was when I ended up being asked by the company senior leadership team to run a company we just acquired back in 2016. And at that time, it was actually me who proposed and led the acquisition process. But it was mostly because of my role as the technical advisor to our EVP of AI and research at that time. But I was not expecting, nor did I know I would end up having to run a company post-acquisition. And when the company was not able to find a suitable leader to lead the company after we acquired the company, I was basically told by my manager, who is the EVP of AI and research, and then his manager, which is our CEO, that it will be my job to make the acquisition work. And given that I started, and now they can't find someone to run it, and therefore I have to be the person. So that's sort of kind of how it started. But what I would say, kind of connecting to the initial point, is really more around, yes, that's sort of kind of the moment. That's the opportunity, and of course the trust, and obviously there's this caveat of, I wasn't thinking I was going to be the person, and we were having trouble finding the right person. Therefore, but it was also trust from my management to kind of ask me that I have to close the loop with this acquisition, right? So that's and to me that was a big challenge because I was at that time I was actually already incubating our cloud AI services, but taking on this new company while still keeping my old job, it would literally quadruple the size of the largest organization I ever led. And it would be also managing all disciplines ranging from marketing, product sales, business development, design, engineering, research, customer support, you name it. And that I don't necessarily truly understand what they are. Even though over the years, I did have quite a bit of experience, ranging from marketing, strategy, product, engineering, and research, over time, but still there were a number of things when you put it all together, I never really had the opportunity to manage multidiscipline. And not to mention, the company we acquired is also geographically distributed over 3 continents with headquarters in London. And so it was lots of challenges for me in terms of, the business I need to learn, right? And then the people management, organizational management, and also not to mention it's an acquired company that you also have to run that in a very careful way so that we don't lose the people, right? We don't lose the talent and we don't jeopardize the business they were in. And then we figure out a way to integrate into the larger, with the larger corporate environment, right? So that we could actually extract the value that we believe we're going to get from the acquisition. And so that's and again, it's a huge challenge for me personally. And frankly, I did not know I was going to make it. But I was like, okay, you know what? It can't be too bad. The worst is I lose my job. But luckily, I managed to survive. And now looking back, it really gave me a once in a lifetime opportunity to develop and hone my leadership and management skills. And it also became the inflection point of my career. And I think because of that opportunity, I made a vice president and then corporate vice president at Microsoft. And it was pretty much because of, kind of the things that I was able to kind of expose and do in those 2 or 3 years time frame.
Right. Yu-Ting, it is an awesome journey that you described here. But I like you are also extremely humble. Like I think you have been attributing a lot to luck. But what I'm hearing beneath it all is that you have done a lot of things right. I mean, you earned trust. You have built your career in developing skills in multiple different segments of the business, right, to prepare yourself to be able to take this role when the opportunity arises. The question I have for you is, if you were to look back at your career, is there a pivotal set of actions that you took, or were there risks that you take that enable this opportunity to come knocking when the time comes, right? Would you be able to share with us?
Sure. I think in addition to what I just mentioned about the opportunity that I had through the acquisition, as well as actually incubating a new product category for the company, and I think probably one important thing that I am glad I took, the opportunity was that I used to be more of it. My mentality when it comes to my career is more of it. I used to think that I am actually good and I can move around on my own steam without any help from others. Okay, and on one hand you could say I was confident, but on the other hand you could probably say I was probably a bit of overconfident, on that. And I think not until that, once I made it to about a director level at Microsoft, and I started realizing that there are actually many people who are as good, if not better, than I am. And the difference is actually not necessarily about how good I am. It's also more about whether I have the opportunities to grow. And I think if I guess probably many of you have heard or have read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And in the book that he also talked about, if you look at, he actually used examples from hockey players in Canada or baseball players in the US, or even actually classic musicians. and he talks about a lot of these professional players or professional or very prominent or professional musicians. It's not they are much better than others who did not become professional players or as famous as as they are. A big success factor was actually more on they had more opportunity to practice, or they had the opportunity to actually practice or even play games in much earlier stage of their life, and then they make it. Over time the gap becomes bigger and bigger, because when you have opportunities versus you don't, even though you might have the same raw capabilities, over time it will make a big difference. And I think if you translate this to career, a lot of times it's about the same. It's more of a, hey, you know what? Yes, we may think we're very good, but there are also many other people who are as good as we are, or even better. But what makes the difference is a lot of times, and is that whether we have the opportunities. But in order to have the opportunities, a lot of times we need sponsors. And I think this is actually very important, is that, and when I say sponsors, the sponsors is not, it's different from what we call by mentors, right? Mentors is a little bit different. I think sponsors usually is, more senior people in your own or in our own companies, who typically might be your management, but don't necessarily have to be your direct management, but who really are willing to look after you and give you opportunities. I mean, they won't favor you, but they will give you opportunities, and then you would have to seize that opportunity and shine and deliver, and then you have more opportunities, right? And I think this is very important. If you do not have a sponsor, and a lot of times you would have to make a lot more efforts, and in many cases may never had the opportunity to do that. And I think if we use, and I think for those of you who have Chinese background, we probably all heard about the story of Wu Song Dahu, right? I mean, Wu Song, he's so capable that he could actually beat a tiger with his own kind of bare fist, right? But then the analogy would become, but if people don't even give you a cat to play with, you would never have an opportunity to actually prove that you can actually even fight with a tiger, with your kind of bare fists, right? So opportunities are so important, but how do you get opportunities? A lot of times you need to have sponsors. And I would say that's sort of kind of, I wouldn't say it's a moment, but it's really a key contributing factor that I was lucky to have sponsored. But like I said, I did not realize the importance of that until I was stuck, and I wasn't making any progress from career perspective. And then again, there was a bit of a context here, but I decided to, that I should work for someone that and stick with the person, and really win his trust, and grow with him, and then I think that pays out, kind of over time.
So do you have, like, I totally agree with you of how important sponsorship is with one's career. Do you have any tips of, how you would identify or even win the trust of your sponsor or establish that relationship with him or her?
I think it's all contextual, and I wouldn't say there's only one way or two. I think there are many ways, and again, this really depends on the context you are in. And I would usually probably say that, look up, kind of, if you work for, a company, and then so kind of look up, some sort of kind of people that you would consider sort of your role model. And this could be people who have similar background, like your own, or this could be literally just people you feel like, wow, I want to be that person, or this person seems to be great, right? And then again, depends on where you are in your career. All I'm saying is more of a, make yourself available, and either join their organization when they have opportunities, or they may, or when, in some cases, more they actually may come and then try to recruit you. And of course, you might be doing very well where you are, but when those opportunity comes, sometimes you have to make a bit of judgment call or take some risk of actually going, and building our relationship. And then again, probably maybe a slightly better way for me to share with this is more, over the years, what I have learned is this: projects come and go, but people eventually are what truly matters. And so that's why I feel it's important to find your sponsor, right? Find a set of people whom you believe could build mutual trust and mutual respect together, and then you can do some amazing things together, and then you could have an amazing career, right? And that would kind of come as a part of that. And I think it's important because a lot of times I think we probably struggle with, yeah, I know that person is a good leader, but you know what? His project is just boring. I don't want to go there. I mean, my project is actually very, very cool. It's like it's super important, and I want to stick with the project, right? And I think that's great too. So I'm not saying you all just always just kind of prioritize people over projects, but what I'm saying is more of a context change. Any important project may become less important over time, and boring project may become super interesting over time because of business context change, because of technological context change. But I think people is still probably the factors that's eventually is still most important. And I think we probably all have heard about this, right? People don't necessarily leave a company because the business is not going well, right? Most people leave the company because they just don't like their manager, right? Because of their manager, right? And yeah, so I think that's probably something the biggest thing I have learned over time. Yeah.
That is well said. Like people and relationship is really long term, right? Compared if you to put it into context of projects. Now coming back to being a line manager, as you said, leading 40 to 50 people to then quadruple the size of your organization. How has your leadership changed in your current role as a corporate vice president to have to manage such a big team? Like, do you see the challenges evolving, and do you see your challenges evolving with it?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, I think very good question. Yes, definitely it actually evolves, and it probably evolves. It continues to evolve, right? And I think leadership or management is a lifelong process. And I would say compared to who I was 30 years ago, I think I've come a long way, and have learned a few lessons along the way. But I still see opportunities to learn and improve every day. Again, I mentioned that earlier, that leadership opportunities are everywhere. And I'll probably say a few things I've learned that helped me. So kind of as I kind of continue to evolve or continue to improve. I think the first one is probably the first most important one I want to share is more of a kind of as well. It's kind of transition from a more middle management and into more of a kind of executive leadership, particularly doing the opportunity I just mentioned earlier. That is, do not over-index on technical or functional competency. And I think this is I have found from many of my friends, and this is not just Asian specific. I think this probably in general, it generally applied to a lot of people. But I would say for Asian, it is based on sort of kind of my exposure that would probably have a bit more over-index on technical or functional competency than others, and probably simply because our background, we usually came to this country, more of a study engineering or science or functional, such as finance or marketing or operations, and then we do a very good job on what we do. And then we believe that's actually our competency, and that we believe that will take us a long way, and which is actually all true. But I think a lot of people, and that's really, I'll be honest, that I do not realize this until a little bit later in the process, or a later part of my career, is that the more senior you are, other non-technical functional skills such as how you communicate, how you articulate your thought, and how you lead, and how you actually make decisions, and how you work with others, and how you attract and grow and retain talents, and how you lead by example, and how you really not talk the talk, but really walk the talk, right? And these are actually much more important than, oh, am I a better programmer than you are? do I write a more efficient code than you are, or do I understand this particular machine learning techniques better than you are, deeper than you are? The latter, those technical things are not that important anymore. And I'm not trying to say they are not important. I think what I'm trying to say is more if you can make into middle management in general, you already have all the technical competency or functional competency that you ever need. But to make you differentiate from others, it's really the other set of skills, that actually would define or more give you the opportunity to shine over others, or because unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the opportunities become less and less as you become more senior. And so I actually think that's probably something I learned over time as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Like, I think, what my takeaway is, it's so important not to be pigeonholed into something that you are very good at, that you're comfortable in, right? But it sounds like we need to take risks to pick up other skill sets as well, and find opportunities for us to grow from there.
Right, that's right, yeah. And then I think probably if not, at the risk of overemphasizing, I would just also say that again, that we probably heard this all the time from among people around us, that we will probably hear comments like, I don't understand why this person can be my manager. I mean, I write a better code than he is, right? I'm more technical than he is, and I don't understand why he can be our leader or why he can be our manager, right? I think that's precisely what it is worth you thinking why you might not want to think that way. Okay, again, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that there's always a balance, but if you want to kind of really grow out of middle management, then it's really the soft skills that would most likely define or guide your success, rather than the hard skills, on that. And I'll take an example. This is actually, I'm probably going to hopefully say a little bit of a kind of joking way, but I'm serious about this. One is, I remember a number of years ago when Microsoft, we started building an engineering center in Beijing, and one of the leaders over there, it came over here and sent an email to a bunch of Chinese employees over here. And of course, I was one of them, received the email and the recruiting email. And the email was actually, when I first read the email, I was like, wow. I was actually laughing, but I was like, wow, that was interesting. The email starts with this: if you're sick of your American colleagues telling you that you need to improve your communication skill, you need to improve your leadership skill, come to Beijing and join us. Okay, and the reason I actually thought I was laughing, I was like, wow, actually that's kind of true, was like, well, that's precisely what my managers have been telling me in the last couple of years, at that time, right? You think you need to improve your communication skills in addition to your language. You need to improve your leadership. And I was like, okay, well, they are not very tangible to me, right? If you're telling me that I need to write a better code or I need to write a better spec, I think I can get it. But it's like, what do you mean by improving my communication skills? What do you mean by improving my leadership skills? And so I was kind of, at a first glance, I feel like, yeah, maybe I should go to Beijing, right? But if you really think that message slightly deeper, then I actually feel sad about that. And the reason I feel sad about that is because that also tells us we did not appreciate or realize the importance of communications and leadership. And so we're basically saying, all right, great, fine, I'm in the US, or these, all of my American colleagues told me that all the things that they probably just because they have nothing else to pick on my hard skills, therefore they just pick on these things that's not tangible, right? Or maybe I should go to Beijing because you know what? They will keep telling me this, right? But I think what's important, at least my lesson was more on, that's precisely we actually need to work on, right? And they are not useless. I mean, they are actually very useful. Like I said earlier, that once you want to become a more senior in a corporate environment, the leadership, the communication, how you work with people, they all become much more important than kind of domain specialties. Yeah, that Yeah.
Right. No, I think, what I picked up on the example is also there seemed to be some sort of a perception for Asians, Americans, as a whole, right? And that brings me to my next topic that, there are long-running myths about Asian Americans being the model minority. However, if we start looking at the data, right, collected by EEOC, Ascent, Asian Americans have a big problem in moving up the corporate ladder. In fact, Asian Americans made up 13% of the professional workforce, but only 6% of executive, right? One might think that we're better off being in Silicon Valley in the high-tech sector, given our outsized professional representation. But if you start looking at the ratio of executive to professional workforce, the ratio remained equally low. So what do you have, what are your thoughts? And do you have suggestions for what we can do as a community to break this bamboo ceiling?
I think that this is a very good observation, and although I think in all fairness that in the tech sector we probably tend to do better than other sectors, and I think the numbers you quoted is I think it's probably for overall industry, right? But I think if you look at some of the tech industries, if I just kind of take Microsoft as an example, I mean that's a company I work for and I know a little bit better. That in 2021. This is actually coming from our public numbers that we have about 35.4% of U.S. workforce are Asian, but among our U.S. managers, 31% are Asian. So it's slightly smaller, but not like a big gap, right? 35.4 overall population, but 31 are manager. But then when it comes to when we say partners and executives, partners in Microsoft's definition is basically we call our general managers and VPs, and we call them partners, and the executives are corporate vice presidents. But then when it comes to that, it dropped to 26%, and then of course on the executive it's actually about 23%, which is still higher or much higher than the kind of the overall perspective. So I would say over years, I think this has improved quite a bit, right? And if you even look at tech sectors again, if you look at Microsoft or Google, IBM and Adobe, the CEOs are Asian today, right? And of course they all happen be Indian, right? And so I will probably say, in general, I think things are improving, but I think there are things that we can do better. I think there are things that we can do better. It's probably more on one. I think that kind of in a sense it's more of we as a community, right? How we actually really help, people help each other, right? Help each other in terms of giving back and really coaching, helping coaching and developing, sharing experiences with people who have less experiences than us, right? And then also in many cases, we can also learn from people who are, kind of moving in an early career that we can still learn from them. It's kind of we learn from each other. For example, I actually have what we call reverse mentor in the last 3 years. Even though they kind of just happened, my two reverse mentors, they both are not Asian. They both are they actually both are from Nigeria, but I think the uber point here is more we can always learn from each other, right? And then also as a community, how we help each other from career perspective, that we could also offer opportunities. Again, we don't favor, because I think it's very important that we are being very we want to build a diverse and inclusive environment, right? And of course, equal environment where we want to get people with all sort of different background, right? Nationalities and gender and cultural and an academic background and work experience and life experience, right? All these things. But at the same time, we want to give people fair opportunity, access to opportunities. So if you do have those opportunities, and some of the Asian peers or Asian people from Asian communities, if nothing else, just making sure, encouraging them to apply or encouraging them to give things a try, right? So I think there's things that we as a community we could actually and help each other, yeah. But I think there are work we can do. I mean, today, yes, we do see, a number of very successful examples. I mean, there are many of them, but I think we're probably still not doing enough to really kind of cultivate as a community and helping each other and sharing experiences. Maybe I'll use an example of, even if you look at Asian, right? Among Asian communities, I will probably say in general, again, this is nothing statistically significant, but that what I feel like based on my observation is that South Asian tend to do better than East Asian in the corporate environment. But I do think there are probably things we can learn, as East Asian, we learn from our South Asian, friends in terms of, hey, how do they develop their leadership, right? How do they communicate, and how do we actually make decisions, and how do they sort of work together and kind of learn from them, right? But I don't necessarily feel there's a lot of even sort of exchanges between the kind of two large, again, I oversimplify a little bit, because East Asian is you're still talking about a few different places, right? And South Asian is also, multiple groups as well. But I think just kind of more exchanges of ideas and experiences and helping each other can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you touch upon, several really important concepts of building allyship, right? To other, Asia is a very large continent, to other communities within the Asia continent as well, and also giving back to the community, right? Which is the very thing that you're doing right now, and super appreciative. Monty J do have a mentorship program, and we would love to have you at some point. When your schedule permits as well. The last topic I really want to touch on is the topic of diversity. Yu-Ting, I understand that you are a very big supporter of diversity, having personally endowed a graduate fellowship for underrepresented minority students at MIT Sloan School of Management. Why is diversity important to you?
No, I think this is a great question. I think diversity, I'm practical, but I think diversity is really in the context of a business, right? Is that you do want to actually have the access to a diverse set of ideas and also kind of approaches of doing things, right? And I think as a leader, it's very important that you do not end up just favoring or hiring people who act or behave like you, and which unfortunately we see a lot of that happening. All right, and again, that's probably human nature, right? And I think one big leadership lesson I have learned from my mentor, actually my longtime manager as well, is that what I learned is that you don't necessarily have to like everyone who works for you. Of course, if you could, that's great. But if you don't, that's okay. But it's important that you still give this person opportunities and put this person where he could do his best. And he may not necessarily like you either, it happens, right? But you still want to be professional, but really give, kind of optimize for the business, not optimize for your personal sort of kind of feeling, about that, right? So I think, and I found when I first kind of learned from that, it wasn't trivial to me. The reason is because, we all like to work with people we like to work with, right? And if there are people you kind of just don't click, it's also hard to see eye to eye, in general, right? But I think it's actually important that's actually how I also see leadership, kind of move a place where you can hone your leadership. Is really, but how do you actually kind of put aside your personal bias, right? And then really actually include, sort of kind of include those people in your, as part of your daily operations, and then really kind of get the most out of that person and helping that person be successful and helping your own organization, your own business to be successful, right? And I think that diverse, kind of access of different kind of diverse set of talent and then capabilities, that is just very important. And of course, diversity is only one thing. And a lot of times people forget about inclusiveness. The whole point of you want to have diversity in your organization is actually you have to make sure you include them so that they feel they belong to your organization, right? Otherwise, you could just check, yes, you check the checkbox. Now I hire a number of different people from different places with different background. Great, my team is diverse. But that's only the beginning. And a lot of people stop there. but the most important thing is that, but now how do you actually get the best out of that diversity you are able to build, right? And you have to make sure you include them in your daily operations, and then you actually make them feel they belong to the community or the organization that they are in, and then you can get the best out of them. And when you get those best things out of them, I think you get the best out of your organization capabilities. And I thought that's actually very important as well. Yeah, and then of course, this is a much bigger topic, and the reason that a lot of times you have to start from a pipeline, building out a pipeline, rather than kind of try to just kind of cherry pick, from sort of kind of the existing sort of resources, right? And then that's actually why I was also very keen to kind of help, hopefully that we could actually help, some of the underrepresented minority students, that they had the opportunity to go to places like MIT and study and go back and inspire the community, and then they could actually inspire more people to follow their steps. And then over time, I think the most important thing is, when we do not have to celebrate something special, that means everything is normal, right? Today we might celebrate, wow, we have this Asian executive who's doing super well in this big company, great. But that's really not the most important thing. The most important thing is, when we actually see this happening, we don't feel anything. That means we probably have done something right, that it's actually norm rather than it's just example.
Right. Well said. Well, thank you, Yu-Ting. We have come to, the top of the hour. Just want to make sure that we leave some time for the Q&A segment of this event as well. So for the audience, we have about 15 minutes for Q&A. So if you have questions for our speakers tonight, please input your questions into the Q&A function in Zoom. Wilson will be consolidating the questions and sharing them with us. So if you see a question you like, be sure to upvote it so that we can prioritize it as well. So Wilson, do we have any questions from the audience?
Sure. We definitely have a few questions already, and actually I have some questions in my mind as well. So I still want to have the audience have the first priority. So Dr. Kuo, may I just ask you the first question from the audience? So as you mentioned, it's a very good concept that do not emphasize on technical competences, right? So the audience is wondering that at which level of management the soft skill is more important than the hard skill. I think the question may be, where's the turning point? You already mentioned that very high level, of course, soft skill is way better than, way more important than the soft skill, right? And for the ICs, hard skill is more important than soft skill. But the question may be, where's the turning point?
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's a great question. And of course, first of all, I want to start with saying that both skills are important, right? It's just more kind of how do you balance kind of both set of skills as you progress in your career. And I will probably say, again, this is very contextual, meaning there's no like specific answer, like what's the right moment. And this may depend on your company, your particular organization, or your particular industry. But I would say, generally speaking, when you are still first line manager, you probably still kind of a bit more on the technical competency, and so that you could actually, a lot of times you work and coach your employees working with you and get the project done. And I think the moment that you become a sort of kind of L2 manager, meaning you actually do management, you also do manage managers. And that's when I say you kind of want to building up your soft skills, because now your job may become a bit more of coordinating between different teams, making sure they align, with each other, right? And then you are helping kind of allocating resources or adjusting resources accordingly, or you may be representing your team to negotiate or coordinate with other teams for a bigger project, right? And then that's when I would say you would have to start spending more time, putting more emphasis on soft skills, right? And or if I use this kind of more plain English, it would be, actually, this is kind of my joke to my engineer friends is like, when you start writing code, then you have to work on your soft skills. Or when your team doesn't let you start writing, your team doesn't want you to write code, then you better actually work on your soft skills, because that's actually where you can add value rather than on the coding itself, right? So that's just a little bit of a
Yeah. So the takeaway will be, when you start managing the managers, your main job is to coordinate among the functional teams. So software, a soft skill will become much more important at this moment. Yes. And the second question is even more interesting. Actually, it's more straightforward because Dr. Kuo, you stay in Microsoft for so long, and you emphasize that looking for a sponsor is so important. It's not because the sponsor will favor you, but sponsor will give you opportunity, and when you shine, you get more opportunity, right? So some audience thinking that looking for a sponsor requires luck and the right timing. So if there's no luck, there's no right timing, would you recommend to pretty much changing the job? Because at this moment, okay, at the current timing, like I'm not saying 20 years ago, but the current timing, people stay at companies for a shorter period of the time, and they usually get a promotion when they move to the next company. So the audience really want to ask your personal opinion. If they don't get a luck and the right timing to get a sponsor, looking for a new job to promote is the right way to do, or is it recommend to do?
I see. Let me try to answer this question in somewhat of a broader and maybe in a broader way, and then you let me know if I address the question. Again, I think this is probably very difficult to answer this directly, just because it's probably different from people to people. Okay, but I think in general, I do not dispute, or I happen to agree that it sometimes takes some luck. You might try, but you know what, there's just no such person exists, right? And in the environment, and you are right that if you try enough and you just cannot find, and yes, sometimes you just say, you know what, it's time to move on, you have to go somewhere else, right? Hopefully you meet some, the right set of people, right? So sometimes you kind of just like you invest in stock market, right? Sometimes you need to know, when to sell, but you also need to, know when to actually, admit the loss and move on, right? But I think I would say in general, when think about career, it's really more I think in general it's more focus more on how far you can go eventually, and less on how fast you're moving in the short term. And I know this may sound a little bit weird, but I think we all heard about this great tool cycle, right? That you're running fast in the beginning, that doesn't mean you can go far, right? And then you're slow in the beginning, you may not. You can last longer, and you probably end up being better, right? And I have found that it's actually sort of kind of true. And so to offer you a slightly different opinion on what you just said is that, again, there's nothing statistically significant, just based on my personal observation is that I found that when people hop on, different places, typically they don't necessarily, again, there are absolutely exceptions, or not even exceptions. You absolutely can find counter examples when people hop on, different companies, they get a bigger job. You do see that. But I actually see mostly they don't. And they probably get bigger money, better, more money. But over time, it may be financially that's better, but they don't necessarily have a bigger scope, or and because sometimes trust takes time to build, right? And you stay in an environment longer, you have better opportunity to actually meet people you would love to work with, and people who can trust you, or people who respect you. Versus you kind of keep moving, again, you're probably still kind of betting on your luck, because when you change to a company, unless it happens to people very well, otherwise it's a restart, right? But like I said, I'm not saying you shouldn't, because if you try enough where you are and it's just not working, sometimes the best way is to actually extract yourself out of that and go somewhere else new, and I think that's absolutely great, right? But if you are in a larger environment, I actually think, stay long enough and make enough efforts. A lot of times things will work out in the long run.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, like maybe a related question, right? I think Denise posed on the chat as well. It's like, is there, what do sponsors look for? And, can someone look more attractive to a potential sponsor?
I think this all depends. Like I said, right? I mean, in my earlier, probably up until I was a bit in my mid-career, that I never thought that I need a sponsor. I thought I was just good enough, right? But and actually, the reason I actually started realizing the importance of a sponsor or the importance of someone I can trust is that I literally was actually hitting the wall, right? And wasn't really moving at all. And actually, even the VP that I worked for simply just did not like me at all, right? And then for all the whatever right or wrong reasons, right? And then that's how I kind of started realizing, okay, I have to do something different, right? So I have to admit that this is not like I knew this from day one. I probably actually more on the other side of the spectrum that I didn't think I need that, right? And yeah, so I don't know what's the best way to answer this, but other than you sort of kind of have to keep your eyes open and then keep an open mind, and then put yourself again, talk to people, right? And talk to people about their leaders, understand who they are, understand how they operate, and then you feel right that actually sounds like more kind of aligned with your value, and then you kind of find opportunities to join, right? But do not do that for the sake of doing that. Again, it may take time. Just be a little bit patient.
Yeah. Great. So you pretty much emphasize that don't just get so hurried to move around. Getting trust take time. So maybe stay longer to gain more trust. Potentially will get a better outcome instead of keep moving. Of course, unless you are looking for financial increase or gain, that's another issue.
That's right. Yeah, and then maybe I'll add one more if you don't mind. Is moving. No matter what, when we think about career, it's actually very important that you want to be honest about your own success metrics. What makes yourself happy? You want to be very, very honest about that. You don't want to live in other people's career. Your friend might be actually looking at money. That's totally great. But ask yourself, is that the most important thing? Right? For example, I once had a colleague at Microsoft. He also happens to be from Taiwan. He defines the success as the number of people he manages. And I absolutely hated that. But it's the right thing for him. He likes it and he believes that makes him happy. Right? And then that's the right thing. Right. So all I'm saying is be honest. Right. Do not live in other people's matrix. It's really only your own matrix. Only that would actually make yourself happy. And then of course you have to reassess your objective function when your constraint changed, right? And just mathematically, we all optimize for something. You just need to know what your objectives are, objective functions are, and once you know that, then you can kind of start, forming the right mathematical model, right? But it's very important to be honest on that.
Yeah, thank you. So be honest with yourself. Don't live on other people's plan or perspective. So and the other audience actually provide different point, the angle of the questions. So if we don't have sponsor or we don't talk about sponsor, the audience want to know what advice will you give to middle manager about getting alliance for future opportunity? Because you mentioned sponsor will give you opportunity, but one of the audience say that how about getting alliance to get more opportunities? Could you share some thought?
I see. So maybe actually, I will start by saying that I didn't really mean that you literally would just sit there and sponsor will show up, all right, and then let me be your sponsor. Sometimes, if there are opportunities, again, not necessarily from a sponsor perspective, but it's more of a, if you believe there are good opportunities, good roles that you can grow, and you also actually go and you want, don't be too humble. We want to be humble, but we want to be confident as well. And you actually want to proactively, look for opportunities, and don't just wait there because a lot of times, people just, it's not that you're not good enough, it's just people don't know about you, right? And then even if you look at somebody could be your role model, you also don't sit there, find time, schedule time at coffee time, even 10 or 15 minutes, just kind of try to learn about this person's organization or this person's, just get to know this person. And then probably a very simple thing is this: if he or she is not willing to spend 15 minutes with you, it's probably not worth you to follow this person in the long run anyway, right? And I tried the best I could. I actually tried to spend a lot of time meeting people in my organization as well as people across the companies, because you actually never know. And we actually like to joke that one day we will all end up working for our own interns. So you got to be nice to your interns, because one day they will be your boss, right? And so we actually can also try to do the other way around as well. But I think, when you're in, particularly when you're in middle management, that means you're also senior as well. And so it's also very important that you actually seek opportunities for yourself, right? And that including, identifying potential people who can be your sponsor, right? Well, of course, you don't sit down with them and just say, hey, can you be my sponsor, right? You have to start building up, trust and then relationship and respect, and then maybe doing some projects together, or maybe still going to the team, but not under the condition of you have to be my sponsor, therefore I come to work for you, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So and the next question is, some audience really impressed about your great education background, like great university in Taiwan, and also the MIT, the Ivy League. So actually they have a question that, what are your thoughts to enter an industry without your kind of education training or stereotype background, like super high end of great quality, the school, maybe just from tier 3 school? They want to know, your thought about it.
I think it's a great question. Let me start by saying that I was actually never a good student. Like I said, I struggled, and yeah, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to study. Yes, I probably appeared to be going to all the schools, but I struggled. But I would say this way though, is that I think we should all be proud of the schools we went to. Yeah, it could be an elite school, but it could be any schools. We should be all proud of that. And I personally also don't think kind of educational background is the most important thing. Particularly, maybe it helps with your first job, just because when companies or hiring managers do not have any references in terms of, or to predict how you can perform, the best way to do that is look into how you're doing in school, right? But that still seems to be, kind of a good indicator of at least kind of your certain capabilities. So that does help, a bit on the first job. But I will say this way: one, if after graduating from school, doesn't matter it's a PhD or master's or undergrad, if after you're done with the school in 3 years, if you're still thinking your school is still can help you to get a job, something is not right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I want to be very clear on that. And for example, when I look at resumes, when I hire people, regardless as kind of senior positions or even middle tier, kind of middle management or even junior positions, I seldom really, because of somebody is from certain school, that I would actually give a bit more preference or biased opinion about that. No, and we actually, it's really about how you do in your interview, and also what you have done, what you have achieved in your previous roles, right? And how you work with people, and it's very important that way. And actually, but this is actually a very good point, because I've seen particularly Asian, just because we probably all tend to go to relatively sort of kind of better schools, just because we'll probably Asian families put a bit more value on going to schools, but that also actually caused some sort of unintentional challenges for certain people, that people actually live in the past. People would think that I went to all the great schools, and why I did not get a better job than those who actually didn't go to as good a school as I am, right? And I sometimes like to joke that, probably for most part of, at least for, I want to be a little careful, be respectful to my managers, but I think there's a good chance in a bigger part of your career that you all end up working. We all end up working for people who did not go to as good schools you are. But that did not mean they are not qualified to be your manager. Like I said, education is just a small part of that, right? And once you start working, it's really about, how you work with people, what are the things you can achieve. It's not about school, right? And as a matter of fact, one of the best engineers I have met in my career, he didn't even finish high school. And I have also had to push out people who went to like the best schools because they didn't know how to work with people, right? And or they did not appreciate, other people's contribution, right? And so I think again, this is all comes down to how you a lot of kind of your attitude, the soft skills, and not just school. School, it's something, but it's not so yeah. So that's that. I will stop here, but hopefully I make my point.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. That's awesome. I think your feedback will be helpful to those audience who have this question, to encourage everyone who may not from the tier 1 school definitely have a great future in the career growth.
But I do want to be clear that I don't mean don't go to tier 1 school at all. It's more go to a school that really you feel match you the best, right? Don't go to a school. Again, personal opinion. I don't want to generalize this, but I typically like to hear people saying they go to school because they believe the school gives them something, rather than because it's number 1, or because it's the best. Because there's no such thing called best schools. We all like to say certain schools are like number 1, number 2, number 3. No, there's probably, maybe you can say there's top 50. They're all good in their own ways, right? But not like there's only that a school absolutely better than the others.
Yeah, and so may we have time to do 2 more questions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm fine. Yes.
So, the next one is what kind of manager could be more accepted or popular for American companies? Since you already work for American company for more than 20 years, so the audience want to know from your point of view, what kinds of manager are more accepted and popular?
I would say all kind. I mean, people are all different, right? And I think management, there are certain kind of basic criteria or basic expectation as managers. But again, in the spirit of a diversity and inclusiveness, right? I mean, they see many different managers. They are managers who enable people. They are managers who inspire people. Again, when I say manager and leader, I kind of a little bit interchange in this particular context, right? And in some cases, there are people who micromanage. And of course, we all think micromanaging is bad. It's not necessarily bad, because in certain cases, people actually, again, this we call it by strategic leadership, which is you don't really have one style of leadership, right? You manage or lead people based on who they are, where they are with their career and their capabilities, and then you actually do you lead them in different ways, right? And so we have people who just start doing something new, very junior, don't know what's going on, and maybe actually still try to figure out, what to do. It's okay to be a little bit micromanaging, but your micromanaging is because it's not because you don't trust them, it's because they need your help, right? And then you spend more time with them and giving them a bit more detail, kind of help, right? So I think, and then in some cases, it is somebody who is a very senior and very experienced and confident, and with very good track records, you probably just want this person really kind of run his or her own business, right? So I wouldn't say there's any perceived kind of more popular or more expected type of manager in American companies. I think this is probably the great thing about being in kind of probably more. I cannot comment on other type of companies, but at least for American companies I've worked for, is no, you do see many different type of managers, but you also have to find the ones that sort of can align with the value that you appreciate, right? And then also kind of the ones that click with you ideally.
Yep.
Right.
Yes, and very final question, actually, just echo back the whole thing of your conversation and discussion today is how important soft skill is. The question is, it is more difficult to develop the soft skill than the hard skill, as you mentioned. What did you do to improve soft skill? This is the final one. Could you just share with some light to the whole audience?
It depends on what it is. And I usually focus on, again, when it comes to soft skills, again, skills, there are a lot of them, right? And some of them, I know that I am not good at it, but I know I can improve. For that, I would proactively seeking opportunities to address that. But there are also certain things that I know I'm not good, and I also know I'm not sure I can actually really improve that much. And for those type of areas where I would usually just make sure and try to actually, when I can delegate, I would delegate to people who I know can do better job than I do in terms of, for example, when it comes to coordinating with people, right? And if I feel someone can do a better job than I do, I try to actually also delegate as well. I'm saying, I guess, my point here is more there are things I know I can improve. I'll definitely do something, and then there are also things that I know I don't necessarily like to do, or I'm also not good at that. But if it's actually bad enough that it's detrimental, I will still try to improve to the degree that it doesn't become detrimental. But I would not spend too much time try to actually overcome to make it my sort of kind of my strength. But again, this is a little bit more kind of, you can debate this philosophically, and again, probably seeking opportunities is the most important thing. It's really kind of proactively facing the try to find opportunities and hone the skills. And sometimes it's just like I said, I was a bit more of a kind of out of necessity in some of those skills I have to develop. But sometimes, you just need to practice, and over time you'll become good. You'll become good at that. Yeah. But again, it really depends. There's so many different things. I mean, communication is one thing. Working with others is another. And of course, leadership is you can probably spend the entire semester talking about how to improve your leadership, right? So.
But as you said, looking for opportunities is the most important.
That's right. Yeah, and probably more learning or improving from doing things is probably the best anyway. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Thank you very much. Actually, our time's up. So I will give the stage back to Benny.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We have now come to the end of the event. On behalf of Monty Jade Board and also Monty Jade community, I'd like to thank you, Yu-Ting, for spending time with us today, sharing your experiences and lessons in leadership. I've learned a lot myself, and I'm sure many in the audience feel the same. Before we leave, I would also like to thank our audience for joining us this evening, and also our sponsors for making this event possible. Thank you. And Peter, do you have do you like to say a few words?
Sure. It has been a pleasure, Yu-Ting. I've also learned a lot from you today. Too bad I was never in one of the larger companies. I've always been on the venture side. Good catching up, and love to have more catch-ups down the road, right? Now that we're living so close to each other. Anyhow.
Never too late.
Yeah. So today's event, we would like to also not only thank the Science and Technology Division, who's the sole sponsor of today's event. We would like to also thank all our long-term sponsors, whose name we have a lot of people that in organizations that have helped us. I'm not going to read their name, but we truly thank you. And if any one of you who feel that the events are of value to you, of course, we're a nonprofit organization. If you would like to donate, please, by all means, reach out to us. We would be happy to accept your contribution. Thank you very much. This ends 2021's TIANS Forum. Benny.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, again. And with this, we will officially end the event.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Okay, thank you, Yu-Ting. Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you,
Director Ye.
Yu-Ting.
Okay, thank you, Benny. Bye-bye.